My cat decides he has to eat his crunchy, dry food when we are gonna film this, but that's okay. He can do no wrong. He can do whatever he wants. Hi friends, fellow book nerds. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Becca and we're talking about books. Today we're talking about all of the popular books that I have read over the last 3 to 4 years, I would say, that I think are worth their popularity and worth the hype. Now we're talking YouTube, TikTok, book Twitter, Bookstagram, things like that. A lot of these are highly talked about, highly rated. I tend to be quite picky with the books that I do pick up, but I do get sucked into the general popular books, as many of us do, especially I think when you're just starting out. A lot of these are popular for a reason, and I stand by that. Just because a book is popular doesn't mean that it's bad, doesn't mean that it's low quality, it doesn't mean that it's, you know, dumbed down. I see a lot of stupid takes on the internet that kind of insinuate that. They're fun, they're easily accessible, they're easily digestible by the average reader and the average person, and I think that's great. So while I do want to branch out a bit more in the future in my reading, I have read a lot of popular books that I have seen on the internet. And I do have a general style that I know that I'm drawn to. So if you have any taste similar to mine and you trust my judgment at all, you might like some of these books. So you can stick around, please subscribe, please like this video, and let's just jump right into it. My kind of preferred genre is fantasy romance, historical fiction, literary fiction with some kind of like magical element. And I really enjoy when there's like an academic setting as well. These are all essentially 4 and 5 star reads for me. And we're gonna start with fantasy and like fantasy romance. So the first ones, I have talked about these a lot on the channel, but that's because I really like them and I think they're some of the best fantasy YA books series to have come out in recent years. The Serpent and Wings of Night series by Carissa Broadbent, I think are absolutely worth the hype. They are the typical young girl goes through a magical trial, and they're also vampires. I don't know what it is about these. I think it just did everything well overall. Plot, characters, romance. It had just the right amount of everything. This is one where I actually read the first book, spoiler, The Cruel Prince. I read this and I was like, that was okay. But I liked it enough that I continued the series. I read the whole trilogy, and now I've also read the spin-off series. The more YA fantasy that I read after this, the more I appreciated The Cruel Prince. And the more that I thought this was done better than some of the others that I read after this. This is kind of getting some discourse recently as well on the internet, because a lot of the girlies were disappointed that this wasn't full of smut, and it's not. It's not. It's also not full of politics either. It's also not hard to follow. It does have romance, it's just not thrown in your face. If you enjoy sexual tension and characters being mean to each other and that does it for you romance-wise, then I definitely think that you should give the Cruel Prince trilogy a try. More kind of YA fantasy is the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. I also really enjoy Shadow and Bone. I know it's kind of an unpopular opinion. These are objectively better. If you don't want to go into another 5-book plus world and you just want something really good, this is like a heist, high action fantasy with a lot of different characters, like found family trope plot, and the pacing of these is really good. Okay, and then obviously, if you know me, if you've been on the channel, you know I'm going to recommend these. A lot of people have opinions about Sarah J. Maas books in general. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses as one of the very first books that got me back into reading. And for that, I appreciate it and love it so much. And I think there is a reason why A Court of Thorns and Roses specifically is such a perfect entry point for new readers, people especially wanting to get into fantasy and fantasy romance. There's a reason that ACOTAR is so popular, because it's just accessible, perfect amount of fantasy, of romance, in my opinion, for someone who is just kind of getting into reading or just wants to see what like fantasy romance is about, what fae is about. It's not lore heavy, it's not politics heavy. It does have some more politics as you go through the series, What can I say? I mean, sometimes the popular things are just popular for a reason. In my opinion, that's ACOTAR. My personal favorite is A Court of Mist and Fury. Feyre and Rhysand just hold a special place in my heart. So I just love it. I don't know what else to say. Also, the entire Throne of Glass series. Throne of Glass is objectively a better epic fantasy series. That being said, ACOTAR I think is still my preferred because I read it first. But if you are ready for something a little more heavy, a little more dense, has a little bit more depth, I still definitely recommend. My personal favorites are actually the two bookends of the series, is The Assassin's Blade and Kingdom of Ash, with a honorable mention to Kale and Irene. I don't care what you say, don't skip this. And if you didn't like Tower of Dawn, just say you don't have taste, and just say you don't have patience, and just say you don't like slow burn, because this is one of the better books in the series. In my opinion, if you don't agree, that's fine, just be nice. Other books that I have not read the rest of the series, but I've just read the first ones and I did really like, and I think they're worth the hype. Daughter of the Pirate King. I love pirates. Give me more pirates. I need to go out of my way to really find some more pirate fantasies. If you have any recommendations, please leave a comment below. Pirates of the Caribbean is one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. It's my favorite ride at Disneyland. Just obsessed with it. Belladonna is a kind of more gothic fantasy. It has a lot of like plant and earth kind of magic, a little more dark, a little more creepy, a little more eerie. I think it was done really well. Haven't read the next one in that series, but definitely liked it enough that I want to get to that one. This one's a more cozy fantasy. It's kind of the quintessential cozy fantasy, and that's Legends and Lattes. If you enjoy just kind of the vibes of people and characters sharing stories, descriptions of warm drinks and pastries and chatter in a tavern, then I would definitely recommend this one. It's not plot heavy, but heavy on the vibes. Now we're moving into more literary fiction, kind of more standalones. A lot of these do have a magical element. Like I said, that's kind of what I prefer. Hi, can you go lay down? I'm almost done. Go on. First one that's been very popular recently is Divine Rivals. I do think that one's worth the hype. Very magical. This one actually reads more like a historical fiction with a little bit of fantasy elements to me. Definitely hits you in the feels, and I thought it was done really well. Haven't read the second one and that one yet, but I definitely will. Divine Rivals is just like a love letter to love letters. And I just think that is so romantic. I thought it was really good. These next two I'm grouping together because they are by the same author, and I just think these are must reads. Cersei, if you want something a little bit more like women-centric and a bit more heavy on like Greek mythology, lore, witchy woman things. Really powerful, just a really amazing story. And if you just want to bawl your eyes out, read the Song of Achilles. You will feel pain. A masterpiece. Another very popular one. This one I think is a bit controversial as well. I think a lot of people really don't like this, and I genuinely do not know why, but that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I think V.E. Schwab is an incredible writer. Really great prose, very romantic, very just magical. This one is set in I think 1700s France. Yes. And it's just about a young woman who, she basically lives forever, and every year she is visited by essentially a hot Grim Reaper. I just loved all of this. I do think this is one where it's a bit more vibes focused again. I just love it. I think it's gorgeous. Weirdly similar to the movie with Blake Lively. The Age of Adeline, very similar. Apparently they're not related at all. One of my absolute favorite books that I have ever read, and one of my favorite books on this list, is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This book, I don't even know what to say about it. I spoke about it before. I just think it's perfection in a book. I think it's peak literature. However, I do see why people don't like this. I think if you don't enjoy a more classic type of book, it's very dense. It can be a bit pretentious. It's very character driven. just kind of like a group of academics, like young academics who aren't necessarily likable. They're all kind of terrible actually, but to me, I enjoy reading about that. I think it's very interesting. I think that people are multifaceted, and I don't necessarily like all the book characters that I read about to be nice and good and cutesy. I like the grit. I like the dark side of people and relationships and the lengths people will go. If you like dark academia, classics, things like that, absolutely give this one a try. Another one that I think is a similar type of vibe, where I understand that it's not gonna be for everyone, because it can just be a bit slow, a bit out there, and not necessarily moving the plot forward very fast all the time. But that's the Night Circus. Just carnival, circus, magical, fantastical, kind of blurring the lines of reality and dream-like states. I just think this is an incredible book. This is another one of my favorite books of all time, and one that I thank the internet gods every day that they exposed me to this book, and that is Normal People with the Bible. This book made me feel so many things. Made me feel very seen as a person who can be very codependent and attached, because I've been in 2 very long-term relationships in my life. And if you have also been in long-term relationships, especially at like pivotal ages and times in your life, you can relate to this book. If you haven't, if you're well-adjusted, if you don't have attachment issues, then maybe this won't hit as hard for you. This book felt like the first time I watched the movie Like Crazy, which is an indie film. It wasn't well received. You get it or you don't, you know? It had Felicity Jones and Anton Yelchin, who, RIP, an amazing actor. 2 young people are so genuinely in love, but they're also so attached and a bit delusional. It's very much like right person, wrong time. It's always been you type of trope. Either you understand that and you've been there, or you don't, and that's fine. And I can't wait to reread this. I love this one so much. Another one of my favorite books of all time. Not as popular now. I think it had kind of a surgence at one point, and I don't really hear about it much anymore, but that is Bunny. And I need more Bunny. If you loved the chaotic genius fever dream that is Bunny, you belong here. You'll like this channel, and you should subscribe, and you should leave me a comment and give me more Bunny adjacent recommendations. Then lastly, in this category, I think Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I'm a little bit biased on this one because I love video games, but I also think the relationships in this one are very real. Kind of just like that, will they, won't they? Like they're so close, they're like brother and sister, but then they get older and then you're like, are they gonna get together? There's some chemistry and some tension there. You know, they're dating other people. There's family relationships in it as well. That one just stuck with me. And I think that if you like video games at all, if you're kind of like a 90s kid, I would definitely recommend that one. Then also a Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think Taylor Jenkins Reid is a very accessible author. Like I just feel like her books are for the girls. Seven Husbands of Evelyn, Hugo is just a really cool, like old Hollywood vibes story of a woman kind of just reminiscing on her life. I also gifted my mom a copy of this book for Christmas this year, and she recently read it on a trip to Mexico, and she said she just loved it, ate it up, read it in a day on the beach. So that's what I mean by these kind of books. They're just very easy for a wide range of people to get into. I think a lot of people would enjoy the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo despite what your kind of book taste is. So for historical fiction, Nightingale by Kristen Hanna is a lot of people's like favorite book. This one, it's dark, it's depressing, but it's very, very moving, emotional, heartbreaking. This one is set in World War II. It's a story of 2 different sisters, how they cope with that. It's a lot of trauma, but a lot of love, and just a very powerful book in my opinion, one that's very much worth the hype. This one's kind of like a fantasy fiction, historical fiction. It's described a few different ways, and that's Babel. I've talked about this book before. Babel was my favorite book of 2023. Babel, again, an academic setting. It can be a bit dense. There's a lot of politics and academic talk. It can be a little bit heavy, but I love that. And I loved it so much, and I think that everyone should try and read Babel. And then lastly, in the romance category, I do not read a lot of romance. It's not really my thing, but I do dabble occasionally. This one is not as popular now, but Christina Lauren is a very popular author. I believe it's actually 2 women. Love in Other Words. That one really got me. I bawled my eyes out when I read that one. I just think it's a really good one. I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed The Soulmate Equation by them, but specifically for this video, Love in Other Words, I would say is worth the hype, definitely. And then last but not least, this one was a huge surprise for me. And again, it's not as popular now, but I think when I read it, it was a bit more front and center of like romance circles. And that is the Ravenhood series. This one is Flock, Exodus, and The Finish Line. This one is just very smutty romance book. Follow different times for all the books. So there's some like love triangle type of situation, not a true love triangle, but those kind of vibes, and then a age gap relationship as well. So if those things give you an ick or you really aren't interested in those, then skip these. But if you have an open mind, I flew through those books. I thought they were so addicting. The smut is just really good in those, in my opinion. And the age gap relationship really did it for me in those ones. If you just want a fun, smutty time this summer, I read these ones like by a pool. Highly recommend. It was just a great time. So that's it. Those are all of my very popular books that I think are worth the hype. If you would like to see popular books that were not worth the hype, books that I actually hated, because I do have a handful, not as many as this list, but I definitely have enough that I could film that video. So if you're interested in that one, please let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe, share this video, do all the things. I really appreciate it. Happy reading, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.